Welcome to the 359. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
Hearing aids are getting much, much smarter. Our latest tech-enabled story looks at how hearing aids are starting to connect to smart homes, incorporate fitness trackers and AI, and eventually even read your glucose levels. The point here is to make these hearing aids more appealing, more affordable, because there are actually a ton of people who deal with hearing loss don't even know it. The number is pretty staggering. It's 48 million Americans, or a fifth of the country, deal with some degree of hearing loss.
Right. Or they don't like hearing aids and so don't use it.
There's absolutely a negative stigma with hearing aids. They're bulky, they don't last long battery-wise. They sound kind of like smartwatches, I guess. But there is definitely a negative stigma here, and we talked to companies like Oticon and Starkey who have all kinds of crazy plans for their hearing aids.
Okay, let me ask you something. Why would you need to connect a hearing aid to smart home devices?
So it's a great question. The sort of the opening anecdote for my story. This woman who uses this Oticon Open hearing aid, which is an internet connected one, basically she says as soon as she puts it on and turns it on, she has the coffee maker brewing coffee. She has the lights in her bathroom turn on. She basically has like a morning routine that's triggered by her turning on her hearing aid.
Wow.
And because she deals with hearing loss. When someone rings the doorbell, that doorbell chime streams right into her ear.
All right, that actually makes a lot of sense. That's pretty cool.
One of the examples, her daughter also has the same condition. She places her iPhone right next to her professor near the lectern so that she can understand and hear the lecture as it streams straight into her ear.
Wow, no kidding. Is a lot of this stuff already available on the market? What's the pricing?
The Oticon hearing aid is available in the market. There isn't pricing and they decline to talk about it because it's kind of different depending on your situation, your insurance. So they were kind of hesitant to talk about it. Some of the stuff from Starkey is really interesting. They're thinking about one coming out this year will incorporate a motion sensor, which allows you to use it as a fitness tracker, but also it'll be able to detect if you've fallen. And actually contact 911, or at least alert a loved one that something might be wrong. Later features will incorporate AI, will incorporate, like I said, a glucose sensor, a non-invasive glucose sensor. They're really trying to make these things like a Swiss Army knife of utility.
Interesting.
All right, next up, Facebook came out yesterday with some new tools and ways to restrict third-party apps from using your data. Oh, and they also snuck in a revelation at the end that Cambridge Analytica data breach didn't just affect 50 million people, it affected 87 million people.
I feel like this happens all the time. Wasn't that happened with the, what was it, the Equifax breach?
Yeah.
Also?
There were
3 million people were affected. No, wait, it was 300 billion.
That's pretty much it. I mean, they didn't really say why. It was after this long blog post. It's almost like a sentence at the end. Oh, by the way, 87 million people.
Big surprise.
CEO Mark Zuckerberg got on a call with journalists. At least he said all the right things. He took responsibility for this. But plenty of questions left for this whole saga.
From Rich Nieva's story from yesterday, Zuckerberg made clear he doesn't plan to step down as CEO. Big surprise there. And so far, he hasn't fired anyone in connection to the scandal. We'll wait to see if that actually happens. Quote from Zuckerberg, which I'd like to throw out there. It's not enough to give people a voice. We have to make sure that people are not using that voice to spread disinformation.
All right, so Amazon Key is out, or Amazon is out with some new features for Key. Ben, break it down for us.
Amazon Key is essentially this in-home delivery service from Amazon. Today, they expanded part of Amazon Key nationwide, not the delivery service, but certain elements like keyless entry, remote lock and unlock, and guest access. And that could, potentially chum the water to get them to do in-home delivery at some point later down the line nationwide.
All right, for more on those stories, check us out at CNET. I'm Roger Chang.
I'm Ben Fox Rubin.
Thanks for listening.
All right, it's time for me to go ahead and jump back into the chat, and I'll see you all there with all your riveting comments and questions. I think this hearing aid thing is very fascinating. I have a lot of relatives who have suffered from hearing loss, and some of these activations and inclusions that come with it, I think, are pretty darn cool, but you don't think about them. Like the revelation that you had with, it starts your daily routine, or the student can hear the lecture. Those are just incredible innovations that you wouldn't think of. Necessity is the mother of invention. Is that what's the phrase?
Yes.
Yeah, that's
something
it.
like that.
That's it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, and I don't want to make too light of this, all I could picture in my head with that routine one, which is the one that interested me, because I'd love to have that. but I could just picture the scene from Honey, I Shrunk the Kids when Rick Moranis gets up and all of the automated bots around his house just start making him breakfast. And it's like, I want that in my life.
Wait, doesn't Doc do that also in Back to the Future?
Kind of.
At the very beginning, right? With the, it does. There's like a whole like.
It's like all the mad scientists
Yes.
or the science geeks in the 80s. That's what
it
they
like,
did.
It actually made breakfast, right? It was toast and eggs.
Yeah, they all made like what are those called? Reuben Goldberg machines.
Yep.
Yeah.
Rube Goldberg machine.
Rube Goldberg machines.
You're
I was
just
trying to sneak my name in there.
I know. It's all right. I caught it, but I was like, let's let it slide. I think Ben's just trying to give himself a pick.
The Reuben Goldberg
called the
machine
Ben
is just
Fox
the guy who
Reuben
shows up
Goldberg.
late for the podcast.
No.
Shots fired.
There we go.
Well played.
Continue on, guys, please, because I'm still digging for some comments.
All right. One other thing that I wanted to mention about Amazon Key we didn't get to is that, and we mentioned this a little bit pre-show, is that it's still unclear whether anybody's really using this. From the CNET reviews on the Cloud Cam, which is their own security camera, it seems that is a really capable security camera, and I would assume that that's selling pretty well. I have no reason to believe that it isn't, but Amazon Key in general...
Like the whole service, right?
Yeah, the whole service,
Yeah.
which is the in-home delivery stuff. Eventually, it's supposed to include home services, like you would allow a dog walker to come in, walk your dog, bring the dog
Right.
back, lock the door. That still appears to me to be maybe a little bit ahead of its time, maybe a little Google Glassy.
It is definitely, there's like a psychological wall that they have to break through to get people to really be comfortable with that. I
Right.
think.
And Amazon is like a very trusted company. That's what
Right.
generally like a lot of the polls say about it. And folks still really pan.
Well, it's that
the
weird
idea.
dynamic where like you probably trust Amazon more than you trust like the local dog walker, I guess. And that's kind of the issue. Not the local dog walker, the dog walker that they would employ.
Or a
for
plumbing
this.
service.
Right,
you know,
right.
If you don't know the plumber
Exactly.
or you know, the house cleaner, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So, but it's I haven't met people that use Amazon Key. I'd certainly, I don't know, maybe I'll try it at some point.
Right.
I don't know. They're doing a sale right now. We'll see.
I wanted to jump back in the conversation with hearing aids because beyond the hearing aid makers, the sort of the other aspect of the story I didn't really get into during the taping was the fact that big name companies like Bose, Harman Kardon, which is owned by Samsung, are also working on these things. There was a law passed last year that basically made it a lot easier for folks to get hearing aids. There was sort of like a sort of a step down non-prescription version of hearing aids for to basically cater to this trend that's called augmented hearing. It's interesting and fascinating kind of seeing what these companies are doing. Like Bose is talking about using some of their noise cancellation technology to filter out background noise and direct the mics towards the person in front of you.
From what
so you
I
can better hear.
understand, from some folks that I know in my life, from what I understand, that is a very critical element to actually getting people to use a hearing aid.
Yep.
Because I don't need a hearing aid. I haven't used a hearing aid, but from what I understand from folks that have tried it, it'll just raise the volume on everything, and it makes it much
which is
more difficult.
not helpful at all, right? That's the thing. Like if you hear all the background noise and everything, like it's still just noise. And so being able to kind of isolate and find the right source of noise, or someone
What
speaking,
you actually want to
hear is really critical. And sort of taking it to that next step, like the idea that these headphones or hearing aids might eventually be able to block out people that you don't want to hear.
Oh my God. How many times are we going to go back to Black
Mirror?
Jeez. Just block their faces too while you're at it. Unfriend.
I mean, look, the folks I talked to said like the technology is possible. I don't think you'd actually want to do this, but it's definitely possible down the line.
I don't like it at all. But it's interesting.
Alex Mitchell confers with some of your comments about the filtration. He says his dad uses hearing aids that you can change to different settings and pair it to your phone, listen to music, and override noisy restaurants, that kind of stuff. Danny Green says we need one that my mother cannot lose. And Srinjoy expands on that, saying how long until we see these turn into implants?
There are implants. There's cochlear implants that basically can replace, I think it's the eardrum or something, that basically can stream in just like a regular hearing aid. So the implants are definitely out there already.
Right. And those are generally for people that are very hard of hearing or were born without the ability to hear at all.
Yep.
So the cochlear implants they're not considered hearing aids. They're they're a surgical operation that you need to do.
Yes, absolutely. But they like many hearing aids on the market. They also fall into this made for iPhone program that basically they're kind of synced up. So like the example I gave of the daughter putting her iPhone near the lectern so she can hear the professor's voice streaming into her ear, that works with cochlear implants as well. So there are a number of hearing aids and devices that have that made for iPhone. I believe there's also a version for Android as well. But
I was about to ask you about that.
No. Like the mobile industry has actually they've been pretty good about making accessibility part of the smartphone experience for sure.
So how long until we see Alexa or Siri paired into these devices?
Fantastic question. We actually addressed that. Starkey in particular had talked about incorporating digital assistants. Wouldn't say specifically which, but definitely talked about the idea of having a digital assistant embedded into the hearing aid.
Where you would just say, Alexa.
I think you could tap. You probably tap your hearing aid.
That's pretty featurey.
I mean, the problem with saying it is that would require the hearing aid to always be on listening for that wake word, I guess, and that might drain the battery.
Yeah.
I've talked to the folks at Qualcomm who said they're trying to address this with like smaller, more power efficient processors, but for hearing aids are the ones I've seen are tiny. So for that to be able to handle a digital assistant and be able to listen for one, I think it's going to take a little bit longer.
I think what they would need is that Star Trek technology where you just have the pin.
The badge?
Yeah, the badge.
I didn't like the badge because it was like basically speakerphone. Like you spoke and then like everyone heard what the other person was saying. Right?
I guess that's true.
I would not like that.
So expand on that. Josh Boyda says, do smart hearing aids have longer or shorter battery life than the traditional hearing aid? And how are we looking for the future prospects for longevity?
That's a fantastic question. So the Oticon product I saw, I mean, they promise several days of battery life, and this is, again, an internet-connected, Bluetooth-connected device. They told me that they had to do a lot of work to kind of make it last as long as it does. And it's really just about sound processing, right? It doesn't have anything else, which is why it's able to kind of run as long as it can. Mm-hmm. I think battery life is definitely going to be a challenge, though, for hearing, especially as you add more capabilities into these things. You have to be mindful of how long they last and how big they are. They still are all pretty tiny, so it's not a lot of space to pack in a battery.
Right. It would be interesting to see where they could go with that. CPR Tech Dylan says, so to go from music or a phone call to a TV, do you have to go through different pairing sequences, or is it all fairly seamless?
I haven't tried it myself, but... So I can't really say for sure how seamless the process is of like streaming in one thing versus another. I would imagine a lot of that's probably run by the app. Like Oticon has an app for its hearing aid, so I imagine you manage your preferences. Just like I manage my preferences for the Bose headphones that I have. Right, I have an app for that to manage the streams and which devices are like the priority devices.
Sure. Let's move on to Amazon real quick because everybody's sick of talking about Facebook. Huey Yeg seems like Amazon is trying to lock people into an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. Is it likely we will see other companies, i.e. Alphabet, try something similar? I think we're already past that point, aren't we? Who doesn't have an ecosystem?
I mean, Google already
totally
locks us into an ecosystem. Apple locks us into an ecosystem. Amazon has it's an ecosystem, but it's like a slightly skewed one because it's not really devices based. It's more...
it's
purchases
getting more
based,
devices based,
but it's more purchase based, right? It's more like, I guess you could make the argument that it's become more media based as well with Prime Video, but really the core is shopping, and these devices are more ancillary. Whereas like Apple and Google, you're tied to their devices and services.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with Google, it's like search based. It's always like get you back to the Google search because that's where they make all their money, but. Yeah, it's a really competitive space, and that's why Amazon keeps rolling out new stuff because it wants to make sure that it's one step ahead of the competition. And smart home is definitely moving. I don't know how many Echo speakers or Google Home speakers some of the listeners have, but I have way too many in my house.
So, I mean, how long until they're literally locked in an ecosystem because the smart locks are now sensitive and you betrayed Amazon's trust and you are not allowed to leave your home until you buy a Tide Pod.
You're late on your Prime membership.
That's like That's next week.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, no, that's. I mean, that would be kind of insane if like you missed your payments, like the doors would like, sorry,
Yeah, like all of a
Yeah.
sudden, like
I can't do that, Dave.
Alexa, let me out, let me out.
Yeah, but like I don't know a lot of people that use smart door locks, but the security camera stuff, going back to what I said before, smart security cameras, internet connected security cameras, whether they're baby cams or just regular security cameras, those have existed for years. There are a lot of companies that provide them. So
Yeah.
I like buying one from Amazon to me doesn't seem that much of a stretch than anybody else. But some of that stuff, like the door locks, might be a little bit harder for people to jump onto.
It's like we watched 2001: A Space Odyssey, and everyone went, "Yeah, let's do that." That was not the point, guys. It was supposed to be a warning.
I mean, that being said, and I think I've mentioned this on the podcast before, to me, it really is, it is an innovation for sure. And the potential for it to significantly change the way people live,
Yep.
how they experience services, not having to wait around for the cable guy all day. All that potential is there. Whether people want the trade-off is another question entirely. But I think people should recognize why Amazon wants to do this, because there is a lot of potential there.
Sure.
And it's not just like a punching bag of like, oh, this is ridiculous. They just want to, control your front door. They just want to control more things.
Yeah. We are almost out of time. We have to cut it short a little bit today. But do you guys have any closing thoughts about where this? I always love hearing about these tech-enabled stories.
Yeah.
It's the most uplifting thing in a sea of
I know, like
expletive
I just felt like
removed.
those stories.
Good point
served-
of counter programming.
Yeah,
this week.
definitely served a nice bit of. It was a nice bright point in tech amidst all the terribleness of the rest of the week. So
Yeah.
but yeah, the series continues. We'll have another story coming out tomorrow as well as next week.
Any leads on what might be coming down the line you can leak out?
I'm
just curious.
No. I mean, we won't be on the podcast tomorrow, but Maggie Reardon has a great piece on sort of the various apps that are being created. They're sort of like to fill the hole for accessibility information for venues, like basically being able to find out whether or not this restaurant, how accessible this restaurant is. You can see ratings for it, almost like a Yelp for accessibility.
I was gonna say they should just integrate that right into Yelp or Google Maps.
Right. Apparently,
or,
there are almost like these accessibility parties, these gatherings where people go from place to place, checking out various venues and sort of as a group, kind of crowdsourcing and sharing the information to the wider public of how accessible this particular restaurant is or this bar. So we've got that, and we've got another one on diabetes tech early next week, and we've got at least one more story coming out. I don't want to tease that because it's not quite finished yet, but
stay tuned for
stay
more.
tuned. Yeah, and these are all fascinating stories. I definitely encourage you guys to check out the Tech Enabled collection on our site, as well as the various stories.
Fantastic. And before we go, I want to wish everybody a happy annual CSS Naked Day. Celebrated every year since 2006, this is a day that challenges websites to remove links to CSS files and show the nitty-gritty realities of HTML.
That was not what I thought it was.
Yeah. Okay.
Oh,
Yeah,
yes.
right? I was worried about the
Cool.
worst, right?
Cool.
I saw you sweating. All right, let's take us out.
Yeah, if you liked anything you saw or heard here, check us out on CNET. Our podcast is also available on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Feedburner, Google Play Music, and the Amazon Echo. See you all next week.
Have a great weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye.